Montello, Nevada, November the 12th, 2015. This is a video on the latest status of my power grid. I got 3 100-watt Renogy solar panels hooked up in parallel, and that is a Coleman 400-watt wind generator from Home Depot. And just a quick panorama around here, all the way around. Montello's over there, and this is my little old 10 acres out here, and I'm on top of the shed that I built, and that's my RV. And that was my first attempt to put a lightning rod up here. When I first moved out here, there was a real bad lightning storm, but it hasn't been anywhere near that bad since. But I'm going to install a lightning rod independent of everything, but in a tight radius, in a tight circle, for everything that I own, and higher than that wind generator, probably about 20 or 30 foot high, and straight into the ground. But my solar panel wires go down there. My Coleman 400-watt wind generator goes straight down. The wind generator has its own controller on there, so it is wired straight to my batteries. And it's got a little red light, LED light, right there whenever it's running. And the windmill will be turning pretty good before that red light ever comes on. And I need to do some more research on how that all works. But I think it's not generating electricity until that red light comes on. And it'll blink as it reaches the point it's making electricity. But then even as the wind kicks in and gets higher, it'll start blinking regular instead of intermittent like it's on the borderline. So I need to find out what that blinking light is. And then when the wind gets up pretty high, I haven't had it get over 20 miles an hour here yet when I've been measuring it, when I thought it was really windy. It's supposed to be rated up to like 40 miles per hour when it really starts generating electricity. But I haven't seen it over 20 here yet. But even with that 20, sometimes this thing will break. It'll like put the brakes on a truck, it'll stop and then just barely turn. And I think that's when the batteries show that they're overcharged and the windmill shuts down so it doesn't overcharge the batteries, because it is a direct connect straight to the batteries. Alright, one question that I did have is, that is a grounding rod, and that is lightning rod cable that I have running across the top there, just in the hopes that if lightning does hit it, it'll hit that and carry down. But I have a grounding rod there as my lightning rod, and I suppose it would work. I don't know any reason why it wouldn't if it was high up in the air and connected straight to the ground. But if anybody has any ideas on why that wouldn't work, then let me know. There's my satellite dish where I make my living, I connect to the internet. Nothing else out here. Alright, let's go down and check out the grid. Climbing down the sophisticated ingress-egress mode. And I have my satellite modem in there, but tomorrow I'm supposed to pick up cables long enough to reach all the way there, so I can put my modem in there. I do have a little 50-watt Renogy solar panel up there that was going to these 2 batteries that are not compatible, and they are both bad, so I need to get them replaced. However, I was talking with a friend, and what I'm going to do is wire straight DC connect to my battery bank, which is in there. And there's my ground connect, my grounding rod, and the lightning rod cable that I'll be moving to a better lightning rod. But these two batteries right here, like I said, they got that little 50-watt running on them all the time, and then when my generator's running, I trickle charge them with the battery. And even with this charge controller showing green on the batteries, which it is right now because I ran a generator a long time today, and me coming out here and testing the voltage and getting voltage like 12.64 volts off these batteries in parallel in the morning, I mean, they're not protected from the cold, and it's getting down in 25, 26 degrees at night, but even still, they deplete very, very fast. I was going to hook up from my battery bank straight across to where the electronics is in the back of the fifth wheel, but the wires from these batteries go straight into that mess and then down into that mess, and that would be a heck of a thing to try to track down where on the other end I could wire straight to it. So I'm gonna have to go, I think I've measured 49 foot total with all the twists and turns from inside, down, under, and over here, and then wire straight in there and just do away with these batteries, find some other use for them, and then connect that 50-watt Renogy into my, along with my 300 straight into my batteries. Alright, so in coming over here, there's my wires coming down from my wind generator and solar panels, and that seems to have held. We've had some pretty good winds this past week, and I've been watching it, and might have to eventually do something, but I pounded and screwed the heck out of that and got some braces on there for that wind generator. Another question I have is, this is my grounding rod, and right now I have two things grounded to it. I have my wind generator and I have my inverter from inside, and I wondered if it's alright to ground more than one thing to the same grounding rod, because in theory, if that gets hit, it's going to come down here and it's going to bounce back up to my inverter, I would think. So do I need a separate grounding rod for everything that I'm trying to ground, which could be a pain, because I know that if you have your grounding rods are supposed to be far away, many feet away from everything else, because of that tendency to travel through the ground and bounce back up. But it goes in the shed, it goes in the bottom, so I only have one hole here. And this is the hole from my battery box, and I'm going to make some changes to that because the wind actually blows straight into my battery box with this contraption. I didn't expect it to be permanent anyways. When I did it, I was just throwing it up so I could get my batteries and everything moved over from that horse trailer into the shed that I built. But I'll probably cut that off about a foot up and then make an enclosed filter and roof so the hydrogen gas can get out without the wind and weather getting inside the battery box. Alright, so coming inside here, everything comes in right there, and I got my solar cables from Renogy, and I'm using 6 AWG wire from my wind generator to my batteries. The solar cables come right here into my MPPT. My batteries are fully charged right now. And I have a little PowerBright 1100 watt inverter. And I haven't used too much electricity today. It's been pretty warm. And it's showing 1356 volts. When I came in here earlier, it was showing 1444 volts. There's 1374. And that's when it's starting to equalize those batteries. And 0 watts being used right now. And this is showing right here, get this to where I can see, 21 volts off my solar panels. This is the MT5 from Renogy, and this little meter hooks up with a network cable straight into my MPPT charge controller, and this is supposed to be a lot better charge controller than the PWM charge controller I was using last week. So the solar comes in there, and then the electricity goes out to my battery, and my meter is showing solar panel charge of, let me get this, we get that glare out, 21 volts. Battery voltage is 14 volts, 3.5 amps is the battery current, and no load being drawn on it. Battery capacity is 200 amp hours, 14 degrees Celsius. 100% voltage. The other night that dropped down to 36%, and it was in the 40% when it was really cold out here. So the temperature, I think, has a lot to do with it, and the fact that we had a lot of cloudy days. There's 98, and that would be battery capacity, amp hours is 200, flooded battery type, and that is the timer, load timers, and that is discharging accumulation, amp hours 0, watt hours is 0.2. That's a pretty handy little meter there. I do have, and there's the grounding from my inverter, I do have a better meter, not a better meter, but another meter to throw on here that has been highly recommended on the internet, and it is a Bogart Trimetric TM2030R for RVs. So when I get these hooked up, I'll actually be able to start learning and refining. I also, in addition to that PowerBright 1100 watt inverter, I have a Nature Power inverter charger, 2000 watt. But when I tried to hook it up on Sunday evening, I was getting good current at the posts, but when I went to turn it on, I was getting nothing at all. And I think it may have been that fuse. However, that fuse is not secured to that green piece of plastic there. And when I tried to push it, it pushed back in there and it hit on me. So I didn't, and it still is hitting on me. You know, if I pushed that, it would slip all the way back in there. Not very good. But that's supposed to be an inverter charger that I can hook my generator when it's dark out up to this, and not only will it provide power to my grid, but it'll also trickle charge my batteries, which would be a nice addition. So I got to get that working and get that Trimetric hooked up in there. Alright, my solar wires come in here, and also my wind wires, and this is my wind negative, and it's 6 AWG, and running down here, this is my wind 6 AWG positive. So my wind generator is coming straight into my batteries, and I've never seen anything that says don't do that. I know I got to get fuses in this. You probably all are wigging out because you ain't seen no fuses or disconnect switches. We'll get to that in a minute. But the wind generator goes straight into my batteries, and also this is my wind generator positive. This is my solar my MPPT solar charge controller coming in positive. And as you can see, these batteries are hooked up in parallel, and they are all the same, and they are CarQuest Deep Cycle Marine RV 27HM 675 cold cranking amps, marine cranking amps at 32F 840, and reserve capacity 180. And I've been online since August the 1st with these. As basically my sole energy power besides my generator, and I've done maintenance on them twice, checking all the water in them, and had to fill up a little bit in a couple of cells using my hydrometer. That's a whole nother adventure, using a hydrometer, checking the acid level with them. But I've done that twice in 3 months, 3.5 months. And I was going to do it last weekend, but I didn't have enough time. It takes about 2 hours to check all these. This is also be a little bit better. I built this ledge to where I could pull one battery out, turn it lengthwise, and it'll be right there ready to work with. These cables I all made myself. They are 2 gauge, and the previous box I had in allowed these batteries to be placed right next to each other, but as thin as I built this box, they can't be because they stick out. Though I guess I could have inverted these arches, but then again they'd be pretty close to each other. Don't necessarily want to do that. So I got a little work to do on improving my wires. Also have a mix and match of the terminals on there, and they're not soldered, and they are just clamped down on there with a sledgehammer and chisel as best I could. But I do have some proper 2 gauge connects to put on them, and they go. Put this on here. That's that 2 gauge right there, and they go on there pretty good. And I also solder them on there, so that will improve the connect on there. Now I had seen that I was supposed to get resin-based solder, and in Home Depot and some of the other places I checked, I never saw resin-based solder. This is lead-free solder paste, so I'm going to try to use that and do a little bit more research before I do solder those battery cables. Another thing I saw was this fluid film, powerful rust and corrosion protection, and it's pretty dry up here in the desert of Nevada, and I haven't really seen hardly any corrosion at all in 3 months up here. On one terminal I think I did, and I cleaned it off a little bit. There is natural corrosion though. It starts to get a bit dingy, and if I steel wool them and wire brush them, then they shine up pretty good. So I'll just keep an eye on that. I don't know if I want to put that fluid film on there every single time, because that means every time I got to mess with it I got to clean it off, and it could get kind of messy. So I'm going to hold off on implementing that fluid film until it becomes necessary. So the solar and the wind come into these batteries. My battery box, as you can see, it's slanted towards the hole in the top there, so any hydrogen gas will supposedly go up there and go out, and I'm going to get a little computer fan from Office Mart to put up in there. And I don't know if I want that fan to be running all the time, so I'm going to have to do some research on that, when to turn it on. In the mornings and the evenings, when it's in daytime, when it's charging up pretty good, because I don't necessarily know if I want that computer fan running all the time. To light up the shed here, I got some theater lights, some DC low wattage theater lights that I'm going to run up there along the top, just for ambient light when I'm working in here or need to check on something. So I do have a couple more things over here. This is a little D-Rock amp meter, voltmeter, but I think it only measures AC, so I'll have to learn where to implement that. And then I have a diversion load regulator that I got from Mike's Windmill. It was shipped out of Arizona, and it looks pretty rinky-dink. But the idea is that when it does charge up to 1444 and the batteries get equalized, if I do have additional electricity being created, but I can't store in my batteries or use that diversion load regulator and shoot off somewhere else to some additional batteries or to heat up some water, or maybe if I build a sauna, maybe heat up the rocks with the additional electricity. And now where I'm at is this. These are all the fuses and switches that I've collected, bus bars, and I need to do a lot of research on there. There's some breakers, there's some good fuses, and this looks like it has the correct wire. But the thing that gets me is, you see, like these little 30 amp fuses that I got from the auto parts store. Those wires are pretty small. So when they're talking about on the grid to use on the DC, it's number 6 gauge, number 8 gauge, number 2 gauge to connect on the batteries, and then they talk about using putting these inline fuses in these little teeny batteries wires. I'm not getting my head around how that can be anywhere effective and efficient, going from a big wire to a little skinny wire through a fuse and then out the other side. I have found these on a video. These are marine fuses, and they're pretty good, except for one fact. That is a 30 amp fuse. However, it is a slow fuse, and I have not found 30 amp quick fuses that would fit in there, and that would seem better because that way I could put larger wires in, my 6 wires in, and 8 wires, and not lose anything. And then you have these are 30 amp that I got from Arizona, and now that I got these the same time that I got these ring terminals, so now I can use, like these are ring terminals for 6 wire here, and before I got these ring terminals, the only method I had, get some washers on there. It's a little large. I didn't have any real good way to connect the wire to the fuses and stuff like that. So that's where I'm at, is on the implementing the fuses and disconnect switches in the proper places, and figuring out how to hook that trimetric up. And as you can see, I've got a shunt just sitting there on the wall, and I got to move to the right place and get connected. So that, I believe, is the status of my power grid I've been running off of the past 3 months, and my load is right here, and I try to keep my usage under 200 watts at any one time, and I would say my average is probably from 100-120 watts running for a couple hours a day, 8 hours a day perhaps. But the electricity is going to go in right there. It's going to go right from there, and about 15, 20 feet, 25 feet. And I'm thinking I'm going to do some research on whether I should use 10-3 or 12-3. If 10-3 is better, then I'll probably use 10-3 wire, run it in here to a couple of plugs. Because even though I try to keep that down, my wattage down, I do sometimes plug in a lot of things like monitors, computers, 2 laptops, maybe a light, and so there are a couple different things running. But thinking about it, when I'm on solar, I try to even keep that down. Alright, this is probably running a little bit long. I'll go ahead and shut it down. Any tips, ideas, notes, or anything like that, I would be certainly glad to hear from you. Thanks.